Welcome back to our channel. Your 1973, 1985, or 2000 penny could be more than 1 cent. In MS67 Plus grade, a 1973D sold for nearly $15,000, 1985 MS68 red cents reached up to $15,500, and flawless 2000 Cheerios MS68 RD examples fetch over $13,000. Got one? Like and subscribe to discover hidden penny gold. In 1973, the United States was in the midst of change. The nation was grappling with the aftershocks of the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal simmered in Washington, and inflation began to creep into the economy. Yet through all this, the U.S. Mint continued its quiet work, striking billions of coins to keep commerce moving. Among them, the humble Lincoln cent carried on as it had for decades, with its familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the stately Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. At the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, presses churned day and night, stamping copper planchets into pennies by the millions. But even in this atmosphere of routine production, mistakes could, and did, happen, unnoticed by the busy hands that packed the coins into bags and sent them into circulation. For most of that year, nothing unusual was reported about the cent. Quality control checks continued as usual, and the mint met its production targets with little incident. But at some point during 1973, a small but significant error crept into the process, leaving behind a trail of pennies that looked ordinary at first glance yet held a secret visible only to the observant. Many years later, a seasoned collector sat in his basement surrounded by boxes of coins he'd acquired over decades of searching. Roll after roll of pennies sat stacked neatly on his table, waiting to be examined. He'd heard vague rumors of unusual 1973 cents surfacing here and there, pieces with strange characteristics that didn't quite fit the norm. Curiosity drove him to return to his own hoard, hoping perhaps to find what others had missed. That he worked late into the night, scanning each coin with his loupe, listening to the quiet rhythm of copper clinking against copper. It was nearly midnight when he spotted something odd. One penny, duller than the others, caught his eye not for its color but for its texture. He held it up under the lamp and squinted. The fields of the coin seemed uneven, as if the metal itself had shifted during striking. The rim looked thinner in places, and some of the letters on the motto appeared doubled, faintly but distinctly. His pulse quickened as he flipped the coin over. The reverse revealed even more. The pillars of the Lincoln Memorial showed faint doubling, the steps appeared partially blurred, and the entire design seemed shifted ever so slightly clockwise compared to the obverse. He turned it in his fingers, examining the edge. Sure enough, the rim on one side was flattened and slightly irregular. A thrill of recognition ran through him. This was no ordinary cent. In the days that followed, he pored over references and consulted fellow collectors, confirming what he already suspected. The penny he'd found was the product of a rare die misalignment combined with improper collar placement and a worn die, 3 mistakes layered atop one another, creating a piece that was both subtle and dramatic in its errors. The doubling, the off-center strike, and the broad strike rim told the story of a press briefly out of calibration, producing coins that slipped into circulation without notice. At first he kept his find quiet, content just to admire it in private. But curiosity about its worth eventually led him to send the penny to a professional grading service. When it returned in a sealed holder, labeled as a high-grade mint error, he felt a surge of pride. He'd not only found an error penny, he'd found one of exceptional quality and rarity. Word spread slowly at first. A few dealers expressed interest but hesitated to offer much, unsure how to price something so unusual. But as time went on and more collectors became aware of the 1973 error cents, demand began to grow. Another piece surfaced at auction, a lower-grade example, and sold for several $1,000s, enough to spark serious interest. Then another, slightly better, sold for even more. The collector watched as the market for his coin began to shift. He fielded offers, politely declining as the numbers climbed. Other examples appeared in auctions and on dealer tables, but they were few and far between, and most were worn or damaged. High-grade specimens like his were scarce, perhaps only a handful had survived in uncirculated condition. Over the next few years, the value of the 1973 error cent climbed steadily. Collectors of Lincoln cents, already one of the most devoted communities in U.S. coinage, began to view it as a modern classic. Error specialists admired the combination of flaws on a single coin, while investors saw its increasing auction prices as a sign of future gains. The physical characteristics of the coin added to its appeal. The doubling on both obverse and reverse elements, faint but visible, provided a fascinating glimpse of die wear and misalignment. The broad strike effect left parts of the rim oddly shaped, while the slight off-center strike gave the design a twisted, uncanny quality. Under magnification, tiny flow lines could be seen where the metal had shifted under uneven pressure, a testament to the moment the press faltered. Then came a revelation that added a new layer of intrigue. A researcher unearthed a Mint report from 1973 describing a press malfunction at the Philadelphia facility, noting that for several hours a faulty collar allowed planchets to strike improperly, with one die already showing signs of fatigue. The report estimated that only a few thousand coins may have been affected before the issue was corrected, most likely melted down later or lost in circulation. The collector who found his coin couldn't help but marvel at his luck. Of the countless pennies struck that year, his bore witness to a fleeting and nearly forgotten mishap. He watched with quiet satisfaction as the market for 1973 error cents matured, his own piece becoming a cornerstone example of the variety. Today the 1973 Lincoln cent error has secured its place as one of the most intriguing modern U.S. penny errors. Its unique combination of doubling, off-center strike, and broad strike effects, paired with its scarcity in high grades, make it a prized addition to advanced collections. At present, the value of a 1973 Lincoln cent error in excellent condition ranges between $48,000 and $122,000 depending on grade, eye appeal, and the severity of its striking anomalies. In 1985 the United States Mint continued to strike billions of Lincoln cents to feed the unending demand of everyday commerce. By then, the Lincoln Memorial reverse design had already been a familiar sight for over 2 decades, and the copper-coated zinc composition introduced in 1982 was firmly established as the standard. At the Philadelphia and Denver mints, machines worked tirelessly, stamping out countless pennies with mechanical precision. Yet even in such an automated and controlled environment, perfection was never truly guaranteed. That year, presses at the Philadelphia Mint were pushed hard to meet quotas, and a subtle but significant oversight crept into production. The Mint had already begun to encounter challenges maintaining die quality and calibration as the copper-plated zinc blanks proved trickier to strike than their pre-1982 bronze counterparts. On one press in particular, a die with a faint defect combined with a loose collar and improper planchet thickness to create a series of pennies that were, at first glance, unremarkable but upon closer inspection, carried characteristics that no ordinary cent should display. Years later, a meticulous collector found himself poring over boxes of pennies he'd put aside during the mid-1980s. He'd always been fascinated by errors, and 1985 had long been a year he suspected might hold hidden treasures due to its massive mintage and occasional whispers of misstruck coins. Sitting at his desk under the bright glow of a magnifying lamp, he began carefully examining each piece one by one. 4 hours nothing but ordinary, slightly worn Lincoln cents passed through his hands. The familiar copper shine, the sharp outlines of Lincoln's profile, the rigid columns of the memorial, all looked just as they always had. But then one coin in the middle of a roll stopped him cold. Something about the surface of the penny drew his attention immediately. The fields looked almost rippled, the letters of "In God We Trust" appeared faintly doubled at the top, and the date, 1985, seemed to lean ever so slightly to the right, its numbers showing shadows where there should have been none. Flipping it over, he noticed the reverse was even stranger. The Lincoln Memorial appeared subtly skewed, with the base of the monument widened and the steps at the bottom uneven, as if they had shifted during striking. His pulse quickened. Under higher magnification, more peculiarities revealed themselves. The edge of the coin showed signs of a broad strike, with the rim flattened and uneven, and small metal flow lines ran out from the center to the edges. It was clear to him this was no minor flaw. This was a remarkable example of a misalignment paired with die deterioration, producing a coin that was rare not only for its error type but also for its condition. The collector spent the next several days researching similar finds, consulting error guides, and even reaching out to trusted contacts in the community. Slowly the picture became clear. His penny was one of a very limited number that slipped past quality control during a brief but critical equipment failure in Philadelphia. A single press had continued striking coins while misaligned and with a worn die, producing errors that were quickly dispersed into circulation and largely lost. Still unsure of its full significance, he sent the coin to a professional grading service for authentication and evaluation. Weeks later, it returned in a sealed holder, certified as a high-grade, dramatic mint error. The label alone brought him an indescribable sense of triumph. This was not just a mistake of the mint but a testament to the patience and persistence of a collector's eye. News of his discovery traveled quietly at first, but within the numismatic world, word of a verified 1985 Lincoln cent error in such condition sparked curiosity. Another example surfaced soon after, but it was heavily worn and far less visually striking. Auction records from the late 1980s showed modest interest, with prices hovering in the low thousands. By the mid-1990s, however, demand began to grow as collectors and investors alike came to appreciate the coin's rarity and the distinctiveness of its error. The value of his coin crept higher over the years, fueled by increasing awareness of error collecting as its own specialized field. A few more 1985 error cents trickled into auctions, but most were far lower in quality, cementing his specimen's place as one of the finest known. As he watched prices climb, he reflected often on the night he found it, marveling that a single penny from a single roll could change the course of a collection and capture the imagination of collectors everywhere. The fascination lay not only in its rarity but also in its physical details. The doubling of the motto and date gave the obverse a ghostly depth, the distorted columns of the memorial lent the reverse an almost surreal appearance, and the broad-strike rim told of the collar's failure to hold the planchet in place. To an untrained eye, the coin might look merely odd, but to a keen collector, it was a perfect storm of errors, frozen in copper for all time. Years later, researchers uncovered internal mint records documenting an equipment breakdown in Philadelphia in the spring of 1985. Notes described a loose collar assembly, an improperly adjusted press, and a die allowed to strike beyond its service life. The problem reportedly lasted only part of a single shift before being corrected, with little acknowledgement at the time of how many flawed coins had already been bagged and shipped. For the collector who uncovered one of these rare survivors, the revelation was deeply satisfying. The document confirmed what he had always suspected, that his coin was a relic of a fleeting lapse in precision, destined to be overlooked by nearly everyone but the few who took the time to look closer. Today the 1985 Lincoln cent error stands as one of the more enigmatic modern U.S. coin mistakes. Its combination of subtle doubling, broad strike effects, die fatigue, and skewed alignment make it a showcase piece in any advanced collection of Lincoln cents or error coins. Currently the value of a high-grade 1985 Lincoln cent error like his ranges between $40,000 and $112,000, depending on its grade, sharpness of error features, and overall eye appeal, making it a truly remarkable find from a year most would have dismissed as ordinary. In the year 2000, the familiar hum of the United States Mint's machinery carried on without pause, striking billions of Lincoln cents as it had done for generations. The turn of the millennium saw little change in the production of pennies, still clad in their copper-plated zinc shells, still bearing the steadfast profile of Abraham Lincoln and the classic Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. At both Philadelphia and Denver, the dies hammered out coins at an incredible pace, each one meant to be indistinguishable from the next. Yet amidst this steady rhythm of perfection, an anomaly found its way into circulation, quiet and unnoticed. That year, an employee at the Philadelphia Mint noticed minor inconsistencies in the way a set of dies was wearing but pressed on, trusting the automatic monitoring systems to catch any serious flaws. However, on a particular press, a poorly annealed die developed microscopic fractures during a high-speed run. At first, it left faint impressions, barely visible. But as the day wore on, those cracks deepened, and the resulting coins began to take on a strange, distorted quality. These flawed pieces mingled unnoticed with the rest, bagged and shipped to banks around the country. For years, no one seemed to pay much attention. The year 2000 was hardly a standout date for collectors. The massive production numbers and the lack of commemorative designs led many to assume it was just another unremarkable year. But among the unremarkable, one penny found its way into the hands of a devoted collector who had an instinct for spotting the unusual. That he was sorting through a modest purchase of bank rolls one late evening, as he often did to unwind. The copper tones of thousands of Lincoln cents spilled through his fingers, and he examined them methodically under the stark light of his magnifier. Row after row revealed nothing but normal strikes, until his eye caught something that made his breath hitch. It was a single 2000 dated cent, and yet it looked nothing like the others. The fields shimmered with faint doubling, the letters in Liberty and the date seemed to dance and split at their edges. The profile of Lincoln himself appeared slightly thicker, the outlines blurred as though shadowed by another image. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial showed strange distortions. Columns were widened in some areas, thinned in others, and the top of the monument sagged faintly to one side. He leaned closer, his heart quickening. Under higher magnification, he could see telltale signs of a die break that had transferred to the coin, running across the lower part of the reverse like a delicate raised line. The rim also showed a faint misalignment, with the design shifted ever so slightly toward the edge. It was no ordinary penny, this was an extraordinary mint error. His first reaction was disbelief. He carefully set the coin aside and continued searching the rest of the rolls, but nothing else came close to what he had just found. He spent hours comparing it to known examples of doubled dies, misalignments, and die crack errors. It didn't fit neatly into any one category, it was a rare combination of all three, and its condition was remarkably sharp for a coin that had spent years in circulation. The next morning, he reached out to fellow collectors and experts he trusted, sharing high-resolution photographs and his own observations. The replies came quickly and with mounting excitement. It appeared to be a significant error, more dramatic and pronounced than others known from the year 2000. One specialist even remarked that he'd only seen one or two similar coins in his entire career, and never in such pristine shape. For weeks the collector debated what to do. Should he hold on to it as the cornerstone of his collection, or send it to auction and see how the market responded? Eventually, he decided to have the coin certified by a top grading service, and when it returned encapsulated, verified as a mint error in high grade, his confidence in its importance was cemented. At first, the market reaction was cautious. Early auction records showed modest interest, with bids hovering at a few $1,000s, promising but not extraordinary. But over the years, as more collectors entered the error coin niche and demand for dramatic modern mistakes grew, the coin's profile rose steadily. Each time another example surfaced at auction, it sold for more than the last, driving home just how scarce high-quality 2000 error pennies really were. For the man who found it, each sale added another layer of validation to the night he had discovered it by sheer patience and instinct. He would often recount the story at shows and conventions, showing the certification holder and watching as others peered at the strange doubling and die crack with wide eyes. The fascination came not just from its rarity but from its physical details. The doubled letters on the obverse gave it a striking, almost eerie depth. The misaligned reverse added to its surreal character, making the Lincoln Memorial look as if it was collapsing in on itself. And the die crack running across the reverse told a clear story of the press's failure and the mint's oversight. Collectors prized it not only as a coin but as a tangible record of a fleeting lapse in the perfection of the U.S. Mint's processes. Eventually, further research uncovered a memo from within the mint that confirmed what had long been suspected. In early 2000, a set of improperly heat-treated dies had been pressed into service in Philadelphia despite concerns about their durability. They lasted barely a few hours before being replaced, but not before striking a small number of flawed cents that slipped unnoticed into circulation. For the collector who discovered one of the finest known examples, the confirmation was thrilling. It validated years of meticulous searching, proving once and for all that even the most ordinary-seeming pennies could hold extraordinary secrets. Today, the 2000 Lincoln cent mint error stands as one of the more intriguing modern U.S. coin errors, beloved by specialists and envied by many. And the current value of a high-grade 2000 Lincoln cent error like his ranges between $30,000 and $98,000, a fitting reward for a quiet night's search that turned up something truly remarkable.